Welcome back, gang. It's Delty from DeltyIsGaming.com, and in this video we're discussing healing as a Templar for One Tamriel. Things we'll be covering in this video, a lot of different skills and loadouts, considering there's not always just one best-in-slot gear set or skill loadout for each dungeon or trial. We're also going to be talking about alternate gear sets that you can use, crafted, dungeon, overland, and what's best for each situation. We're going to go over champion points, vampire, race, and should you level as a healer in One Tamriel. So, if you want to know anything and everything about Templar healing in One Tamriel, this is the video for you. Let's get started with the battery update. With healing in One Tamriel compared to the couple last patches, it's really contextual because there's so many good sets and so many good skills to use that it's not based on you're always going to have this exact loadout and this is what you do in a dungeon or trial. So I'll try to explain this best I can for those folks that are wanting dungeons, more aggressive offense, they want to do full healers like in trials and even dungeons. And so you guys get some context, but just realize there's no one perfect healer build. What you're going to have to do is find what works best for you and your group. Specifically, if you're doing a trial or raid, you're going to need to run specific buffs in conjunction with your other healer and tanks. So what are those? So basically what I like to run on in this game, in this meta for right now, is Destruction Staff. Why, Delty, are you not using dual wield? Okay, dual wield, what it simply does, it allows you to do more damage with Twin Blade Blood. It gives you more spell power, but you don't have the range, and you don't have one of the most important buffs these days, Elemental Drain. Elemental Drain, along with some other buffs, will basically allow the magic DPS to weave in attacks and pretty much sustain indefinitely with Mystic Orbs and Siphon Spirit. So why is that useful? Well, a magic DPS can essentially spec fully into DPS with no recovery as long as you're maintaining a few buffs, optimizing your group better. So what I did is I switched from using dual wield and using sweeps to more of a buff slash optimizer from my group, because it seemed like our groups would do better if I focus on helping their damage instead of doing a little bit on my own. So first off, I use Destruction Staff. Why? Elemental Drain, once again, the range, the ulti gen. So what I pretty much do on my Destruction Staff is I keep it pretty much the same unless I'm doing a trial. So what I have is Elemental Drain, the first buff. Have to have Destruction Staff for that. You're going to apply it on bosses. The thing about this is it sometimes get bugged out, I think, from Puncture, Pierced Armor, because it applies Spell Breach as well. So this thing might fall off early, so make sure you're paying attention to the buff. The second ability I run is Extended Ritual. I think that morph is pretty key for healers just because of the duration and that it cleanses extra effects. So this is going to be your cleansing circle that you lay down. People can use this synergy, but they're going to be on a cooldown for the synergy. So if they have to get purged again, just realize if they just use it, they're going to have to wait a few seconds to use it again. You can replace this down as well to help out your team. But it does a lot of healing over time. Plus it procs our Sacred Ground passive. Snare, but really it's Major Mending. And it also will give you Major Mending after you leave the circle. So this is part of your house, phase 1 of your house. Setting this down where your guys are fighting, or if you're moving to reapply it, I'll reapply it quite often. To cleanse myself, since we moved, you got to be inside of this thing. It has a huge, massive radius, so it's not going to be that hard to do. So typically when I'm in an encounter, what I'll do is I'll run up to them. If this is the boss and the tank's like right here, and I'll put the circle down here. The reason why is if you sit back here and put the circle down, well, your melee DPS and your tank can't hit it. So it's not going to be that effective. So you're going to need to come in, put it down, and stay out. Remember, you can come out and come back in and it refreshes the buff. So Major Mending is why we use Extended Ritual. Third ability up is Repentance. So it gets corpses. Healers run this. It's a free heal. It's a massive heal, and it gives back stamina. So for dungeons, it's just essential to basically blow through all these dungeons because there's so many mobs to kill. And a lot of boss fights do have adds as well. But like something like Rakat, which has basically a couple hulks, this isn't going to be that useful. It's also not going to be that useful if another healer is running it, so you don't have to have every single Templar in your group running this if you're doing a trial. So consider this a flex spot if someone else is going to run this ability. But pretty much I always keep this on, even for the regen as well if I'm doing dungeons. Another massive boon to magic sustain is Mystic Orbs. You throw this magic orb, it goes through enemies, it hits them, does damage, and the synergy is very, very powerful. Even for a stand build, this can reach up to 15k crits. So it's a great AoE synergy. You should also be hitting this at all times because it restores magic instantaneously for those people around it in the 8-meter radius, and 1% magic over 10 seconds to nearby allies per enemy hit. So what you're trying to do with this Mystic Orb is basically like bowling. So you're trying to go through a bunch of enemies, as many enemies as you can, because that's how much magic you're going to restore. Remember that once it blows up, the 8-meter radius for getting the magic back will be calculated. So if you throw it and then just kind of run back here and just like it blows up over there, you're not using Mystic Orbs effectively. You really need to be up close, not right on top of the person, but a few 4 or 5 meters back, and you throw it that way. So when they hit it, bang, you get the magic, they do, life's good. And it does a lot of AoE damage. So that's another reason I focus more on support in this patch, is because people are starting to come around to realize that Mystic Orbs is really good. And it does a lot of damage, so you're really sustaining your magic builds, optimizing their damage, and producing damage, though it doesn't show up on your tooltip. The other morph of this is strong as well, and the healing orbs is very good as well, but I like the extra magic back, so that's why I go with Mystic. I use Radiant Oppression in dungeons, not trials. Really, trials you should be focused on pretty much healing, AoE healing, though you can slot this in if you're not doing like some hardcore trial. So what I do is just I beam targets. That's all I do. That's all the only DPS that I provide really is I'll throw spears if everything else is up, and then I'll beam at about 40% health while my buffs are up. So in a trial specifically, I don't use this since I don't want to be sit there channeling for 3 seconds. I use channel to focus. Basically, that's going to give me back a lot of magic, tons of recovery, and give me physical and spell resistance. So really, my destruction staff bar is pretty much just buffs and repentance, along with Nova. Solar Prison is the morph I take for the Grab Crush, which is a lot of damage and a big boost to DPS. But really, it's the damage reduction. So the way to use Solar Prison is realize that it's within the circle. So you need to actually place it on the mob or mobs you want to damage mitt. So you don't have to be in the circle, the mobs do. That's how it works. Like Veil of Blades is the exact opposite. Nightblades cast it, you have to be in the Veil of Blades to get the damage reduction. Why is this relevant? Well, if a mob is clear over here like a boss, you can place a Nova down on it and still be back here, and everyone sees the damage reduction benefit because the mob is inside of the Nova. You can swap in and out a couple ultimates for this, but really, I really strongly suggest Nova. If you want a little more DPS, you can do Shooting Star, but Nova is going to give you a big boost if you're going up against a really hard-hitting mob. So my back bar, I use Inner Light for the max magic pool, and a lot of restoration staff abilities I flex in and out depending on the situation. First one that I use for dungeons over trials is Rapid Regeneration. It's a great heal over time that does a lot of healing, and you have to cast it twice since it hits 2 allies at one time. So that's somewhat of the downside, and why I don't use it in trials so much is because otherwise you just have to sit there and click it 6 times to get everyone in your trial. So what you do is you click this, and if you look, combine it with the Extended Ritual, you're almost healing for 5,000 a second with just these 2 abilities. You can even heal more for that depending on how many people are in there. So I'm healing myself for 5,000. That's a lot of healing. So why that's useful is in dungeons and trials, I don't have to sit there and cast healing springs because these 2 abilities alone are typically enough to heal us through almost anything. If someone does get low, I'll use a Breath of Life, but really Rapid Regeneration with Extended Ritual is pretty much enough healing for us to get through most stuff. Third ability up is another flexible spot, and it's Combat Prayer. So Combat Prayer gives you and your party 8% damage done, gives us the minor physical and spell resistance, which is nice as well. So the real reason you're using this is the minor Berserk. Now, in trials, there's going to be people that don't have this buff. Like a Nightblade can get this buff by default. So if you're running a dungeon and there is, usually 1 or 2 Nightblades that are DPSing, I typically don't run this because they're going to have the buff anyways, and I don't need it for the healing. I really just need it for the buff to increase damage. For this is not a circular ability, it's a in front of you type thing. So it's helpful when the DPS actually stand somewhat by each other. That's not always going to be possible, but so you can hit them with this. Also watch your angle. So don't always have to go right behind them. You can angle it to get more people. More people you hit with this, the faster the boss dies, the easier it is to heal. So like I said, you're not always going to have to run this, or someone else can run this as well. And that's when I slot in Siphon Spirit. Now, Siphon Spirit is kind of a tricky thing to use because it has a 1.5 second cast time. It's a monster cast time, but the sustain is incredible. So every time someone hits the mob, you get health and 1% max magic. So when you put Elemental Drain up and you have Siphon Spirit and you're throwing orbs, magic sustain is off the chart, allowing your magic builds to just basically go ham on DPS, enchant everything max damage, and you'll see a big difference in your party's performance. Like I said, it's going to be a pain casting this, so typically I only cast this on boss. It's the very first thing I cast if I'm using it on a boss, and then I try to keep it up as best I can. Sometimes it will fall off. So if you're getting caught in the channel, remember to block cast it. Block casting will end the channel duration and allow you to heal if you're in a pinch. Just realize, very, very long duration. Just realize, very, very long cast time, but it can benefit your party immensely if you maintain this buff. Blazing Spear is my Adric Spear ability, and the reason we slot this is for piercing armor and also the resource sustain. So I use Blazing Spear because I do DPS on this guy, and the DPS that it provides in dungeons is really fantastic. In trials, it can do a little bit of damage, but really, it's just nice to have a little bit of extra damage. Luminous does restore a little bit of magic, but it's so tiny. It's so minuscule. So that's why I go with Blazing Spear. Either way, you should have this ability on your bar. 4 stamina builds, 25% stamina, and they can use it very, very frequently. So what you're trying to do is sustain your magic builds and optimize your DPS with all these skills that we have loaded out. So the two things that stamina builds can get resources back, Blazing Spear, and then Repentance. Your magic builds can get resources back from Elemental Drain, Mystic Orbs, and Siphon Spirit if you slot it. So you have basically 2 ways to give back resources to folks. Also, you have a third if you have the Master's Restoration Staff here that I got. Right here, Master's Restoration Staff. So Grand Healing, or Healing Springs is the morph that I use, can also give back a lot of stamina. So that's something worth running as well. So Healing Springs, when do I run that? I do not run it in dungeons. The reason being is there are only 4 people, so it's not going to be that advantageous for me to run this. But typically a trial, what I'll do is I'll take off rapid regen just because of the time it takes to cast on your party, and I'll put Healing Springs there. You really need the AoE healing for trials, and the magic return on this really becomes beneficial the more people you hit. So you can stack the healing effect on top of each other. So if you just spam cast it, you'll see people just spam cast it. It'll be like a heal over time. See that 3x? So 2x, 3x, and you just spam click it as fast as you can. So that's 3 Healing Springs on top of each other doing 6.5k crits. Do the math. You're doing a whole lot of healing in that little area. So get your Extended Ritual down and spam Healing Springs, and it's going to be really hard to kill someone if you have this build up properly. Last ability up is my Burst Heal, the best burst heal in the game, Breath of Life. Very high magic cost. You're not really going to use this a whole lot. You shouldn't be. You should be allowing your heal over times and combat prayer to top people off, more so than just spamming Breath of Life. It's considered your emergency heal when someone's about 50 to 60% health. That's when I cast it. Otherwise, I let my HOTS do the work, because it has a massive magic cost. So you're not going to want to sit there and spam this thing over and over when some of your heal over times can get someone up. So if someone drops to 80, 70%, and you can actually see their character and they just got hit by, let's say, a mechanic, don't spam Breath of Life. Let your heal over times do what they're supposed to do and heal them back up to full. Last ability up is Aggressive Warhorn. Typically, you want your tanks and your healers to coordinate and run this buff. Major Force is such a boost to DPS that if you run this every about 10 seconds between your 2 tanks and your 2 healers in a trial, you know, you can get some of those DPS 50,000 DPS marks on these trial bosses, but you're not going to do it if you don't have aggressive Warhorn. So a lot of people use Meteor or something else on their healers, and I just think it's more advantageous to have this buff up. And considering that it does increase your max health for 30 seconds, that could be a defensive thing you want to maintain as well. So with you and your tank, even if you're doing a dungeon, having one Warhorn after another will really make the dungeon a lot easier. You have more stats, but really you just have a ton more damage, especially for 10 seconds. The thing you don't want to do is cast this on top of each other. So make sure you're coordinating. Sometimes you can't, but it really makes a big difference if you do it every 10 seconds. That's great. That's the skills. Now, how do I use them? Essentially, what I do is I'm always going to basically be on my destruction staff bar first, typically when we start a fight, just because I want to put my circle down. So if a fight's going to start, I kind of come into the little distance, put my circle down, and I chuck 3 orbs. If it's a dungeon, 3 is ideal. Why? Well, you can't use the synergy, so 3 people can use it. 1, 2, 3. Yay, we can count. And basically what I do is start a mental timer for about 15 to 20 seconds. The reason being is you can't use a synergy again until that time's over. So there's no point in spam casting orbs to start a fight after you've thrown your initial 3. Once they reach the mobs, you can kind of come in closer, so it hits, gives you back magic, though you won't need it right away. So put this down. Throw 3 orbs. If it's a boss, I will use my elemental drain on them to start, and then I bar swap. I'll get my hots going with rapid regen. I will give the DPS, thus is what I call it, combat prayer to my DPS, and then I go into priority mode. I'm going to talk about gear in a second, but I do have this invaluable Aether Staff, so I do apply this debuff as well, and typically you can just hold it down and apply it. And what that does is it gives your party, or anyone hitting the mob, 8% more damage. So this stacks with Combat Prayer, Minor Berserk. So you can see how much damage we're providing our people. No, it's not going to show up on your tooltip, but Minor Berserk plus this takes 8% more damage. Look at that. I mean, the things will die so much faster that it's almost more beneficial to kind of play like this and as an optimizer than doing damage. And so previously I had more of a damage healer build, and I've really shied away from that because there's so many useful buffs and sets to optimize that. So the main priority you're going to do on yourself is, number 1, keep your ritual down. Keep your ritual down for major mending. 20-second timer pretty much on Mystic Orbs is what I do. And if I'm in a trial, I'll probably throw 5. If I'm in a dungeon, I throw 3. Elemental Drain on the boss. You can do it to multiple targets, so it does take a while to get it all down. And if they're going to die in 3 seconds, I don't really worry about it. And then on your back bar, rapid regen if you're in a dungeon. Trials, you're going to be spamming healing springs when you need big old heals. Combat Prayer on the DPS every 8 seconds. So that's a buff you're going to have to maintain a lot. What I also try to do is keep a spear on the tank at all times, and it lasts 6 seconds. So melee DPS, stand builds, and tanks, I just always try to have a spear on there. You're not going to be able to maintain all of these buffs 100% of the time because there's just too many things to do. Try to maintain the most damage producing ones. So that's Combat Prayer, that's your Infoul, throw in some Mystic Orbs when you need to, and especially Extended Ritual. If you do that and prioritize, you can really see a boost in damage for your overall group, making it easier to heal. Stuff dies, it's so much easier to heal. So let's move on and talk about gear. Probably wondering what I'm wearing, so just to get that over with, I'm wearing the Dramathra skin from beating Veteran Maw, and then I'm wearing this Golden Saints, and I have it dyed all fancy. So that's not really what my gear looks like. What my gear looks like is really bad, really lame, so I'm not using it. And what I'm using is Spell Power Cure. Really, you're going to want both healers to run a 5-piece Spell Power Cure. The reason why is the effect can hit only 6 players, so 2 people running it, 12 trial, great. When you heal it to a friendly target at 100% health, you get a chance to give him increased damage. That's another reason why heal over times are so advantageous and why rapid regen is so great, because it ticks more often. So you're going to have more chance, more uptime on your spell damage and weapon damage buff with this set. Also gets a ton of max magic and spell damage. It's a great 5-piece. You can get this in White Gold Tower. If you're trying to get this set and you're having trouble, you can always just run normal White Gold Tower and not have a problem. If you can't get a hold of this set or you don't want to use it, another alternative in crafting would be Kagernak's Hope. Now this is heavy, but what I use for PvP. Decreases the time to res, which is really helpful when you're doing some new dungeons, and gives you a lot of spell damage and max health, max magic, and recovery. So it's kind of a nice new player set when you're looking to get Spell Power Cure, and that's what I used to do White Gold Tower until I got this loadout. The next 5-piece I've ran, and it's kind of been going on for a while, but I didn't really see the benefit of healers running it because I didn't know how it operated. It's Invaluable Aether. So I run the full 5-piece, and I was lucky enough to get the staff donated by Gilly MacMillie, so it's powered, Infal, Aether. The chances of getting the staff are staggeringly low, so your setup might not be identical to this. But what you're going to do is run jewelry, and then a shoulder and a helm if you don't have the staff or the staff. You can also run a Master's Resto staff and run the 2 pieces and the 5. So you're going to have 2 5-pieces on. I just have it so I can wear a helm, which adds increased healing. Done. 2 helms that add this exact effect. So it's a Sentinel one, and there's also another one, Troll King. So you can get one or the other. All it does is it grants you Minor Slayer at all times, which is nice. But look at that. Increases damage taken from mobs. Put that with combat, that's 16% more DPS you guys are doing. That's incredible. So the thing I didn't understand about this is you read it and it says fully charged heavy. Well, that's not really the case. Basically, you just hold down your heavy attack for like a split second longer and it applies. So a fully charged heavy is really 1,000. And you see that purple glow on them? That indicates that they have it. So you don't have to sit there and go 1,000, 2, 1,000. That's actually a fully charged heavy. Nope. All you have to do is just kind of give them a little love tap. And boom, you have Infal. And you have Infal. So I think that's way more advantageous because a lot of times when all my hots and buffs are up, I'm just heavy attacking on my resto to make sure my magic is up anyways. So it's an awesome, awesome, awesome set to run for dungeons and or trials. So some alternative sets to run. Obviously, Worm Cult is what I ran for quite a while. And typically you're going to want to have one healer or one person in your group run this because the reduced magic cost is incredible. Now it has a 2-piece spell damage with it. There's no downside to running Worm Cult. Twilight's Remedy is another one people can run. The 3-piece granting Minor Aegis can be helpful. The thing about the synergy, it does give a nice heal over time, which is great. The Minor Force looks really juicy, but typically every DPS, no matter if they're Stam or Magic, will be running Trap Beast. Or should be at least. So Guild, Fighters Guild, Rearming Trap. Well, that gives the exact same buff, Minor Force. So if you're wanting to maintain optimal DPS in trials, as a DPS, you're probably going to be running this. So the 5-piece in Twilight's Remedy doesn't appear to be as effective as it had been in the past. Another really tanky set is Gossamer. It can hit 6 people in your group as well. Gives you a chance to do major evasion, so that will really prevent a lot of deaths for you and your party. A really good set, though I just don't see you using it over something like Infal, which can increase damage, because stuff's dying faster. It's just so much easier to do this content. Last but not least, my favorite healing set for PvP, the Sanctuary set. This thing is incredible. Increase your healing receive by 12% for you and your group within 12 meters. Okay. You and your group. Anyone doing healing or getting healing received, look at that, 12%. So it's just going to basically make your heals much, much stronger because everyone in that little area, your healing springs area, gets this benefit. So Sanctuary is an incredibly powerful set. The 2-piece isn't that good since it gives us max health. That's okay. The 3-piece healing taken, but it's a really tanky healer set. And this is an overland set. This set can be found in dungeons, managed cells. You can run at 1 or 2 to get this stuff. So Sanctuary is incredible for pure healing. Another reason why it's so powerful because it stacks with major and minor mending. So if you wanted something like just savage amount of healing. You could put your ritual down, you could run the healer set, and you could run a 5-piece of this. You get 12% healing received, 8% healing done, and 25% healing done. You would heal like a truck. So just realize this is a great option. As far as helms go, another one that I absolutely love is Troking. It looks underwhelming, and people say health recovery sucks, and I thought the same thing for a very long time. But I'm telling you right now, this thing is staggeringly powerful because it's 60%. It can reproc at any time. It has 10 seconds to give increased max health recovery, and you'll see a big boost to your survivability in your group. So if I were doing something like hardcore trials and you really wanted max survivability, I'd run 2 Troking helms. I'd run 5 Sanctuary on my body, and then some other jewelry piece like Infal or Willpower or something like that with a Master's Resto. If I wanted a more offensive build, I'd run something like I'm doing right now. 5-piece Spell Power Cure, 5 Infallible Aether, and then maybe a Master's Resto if you don't have this. You can also run some DPS type set on your 2-piece like Rothar or Valkynscoria if you wanted to, but I really think it's more advantageous to run as a debuff type healer. Lastly, another 2-piece helm set that's really good for PvE and PvP is this. When you deal critical damage, and that can include your Blazing Spear, you proc a damage shield, 20% chance to proc it. The damage shield in hardcore trials is very helpful if you're having a hard time surviving. This can be found in Dire Frost Keep, so it's a very good option. The Sentinel set I wasn't very impressed with just because the spider thing didn't seem to go where I wanted it, though it is an option for you. Another set is the Chokethorn set, which procs a big old green beam. The problem with the Chokethorn set is you only get one player. You can Repentance it, which is great, so a dungeon Chokethorn's pretty good, but in a trial, burst healing one player for a 2-piece probably isn't going to be as beneficial as something else that we can run. You can also run a 1-piece Shadow Rend for max recovery if you wanted, if you're having trouble with resources. But really, this is the sets that I came up with. So if you have trouble getting Infallible Aether, you can stick with what's worked forever, and that's 5-piece Spell Power Cure, 5-piece Wormcoil. You want more... I would stick with that until you get some of these other sets that become a little bit more optimized, and really just it comes down to you and your group. If you're running hardcore trials, you need to ask other people in your trials, are you running Infallible Aether? Are you running Mystic Orbs? Are you running Repentance, Combat Prayer? Otherwise, some of these buffs won't stack, and you'll be wasting a skill slot, you'll be wasting a gear slot, and it won't be optimal. So try to be vocal in your communication and figure out who's running what, or you're just not going to have an effective healer build. Okay, champion points. I have this set up for PvP, but essentially what you're going to do is 100 Magician, and then over here, 87 Arcanist. And I have block and CC break. Now, depending on what you want to do, if you want to be a main full healer, just simply put 100 points into Bless, 87 into Elfborn. If you want to do some damage too, you're going to need some Elemental Expert, Spell Precision, and Thaumaturgy if you're using sweeps. Though I really just stay as a primary healer from now on because I can help my DPS so much that it outweighs me doing damage. Come over here, 7 in Thick Skin, 5 in Hardy, 87 Elemental Defender, and 9 in Quick Recovery. On your character, ideally you would want infused on your main big body slots, so your legs, your helm, and your chest. And the reason why I run the Atronach Mundus Stone for more recovery, and I also keep it on in PvP. So with the potion up, with my buffs up, I can have enough recovery to sustain myself indefinitely. So that's why I run infused and divines instead of all divines. If you have a lot of recovery and you can manage your resources well, I would go all divines and go with the Thief Mundus Stone over it. The ritual does increase healing done, which can be useful, but I think 12% or 18% critical with all divines gear outweighs 12% healing done. Also, I'm a vampire, and vampire can be really advantageous in some applications and then terrible in others. PvP, I love it, so I'm not going to get rid of it. In PvE, it can really hurt you, though. Some fights you'll never even notice, like Sanctum Ophidia, and you get the magic regen. Great. Other fights, like Hellraw Citadel, you will notice it and it won't be good. The nice thing about it is you can feed and lower it to stage 1 and then just spam your abilities to get to stage 4 if you want to do PvP. So the ultimate counter for this, if you are running a vampire and having a hard time, is annulment morphed into harness magic. It just gives you a massive spell shield. So that's something that I run in dungeons, like if we're doing White Gold Tower and we're just taking a lot of fire damage. Typically I'll slot that instead of Inner Light, and I'll just run spell power pots. So when I say spell power pots, to get your spell power buffs, right here. They're expensive, but yeah, they're worth it. Gives you the major sorcery and the major prophecy. You're also going to want to level your alchemy up all the way to 50, so you get medicinal use. Getting CP 150 potions will allow you to use them every 45 seconds, essentially maintaining those buffs 100% of the time. As far as race goes, I mean, you can heal basically on anything. What I think is optimal is an Argonian, which sounds funny. And when I tested on the PTS, essentially the 5% increased healing done outweighed the High Elf's more max magic. So as a Argonian, we still get 3% max magic, which is nice, but really the 5% healing done seemed to heal more so than the max magic. Though I wasn't investing in slot gear and it could change. Either way, it's really, really close. Argonian, Breton, High Elf, all really, really good choices. Dunmer, I mean, you could heal on an Imperial, it doesn't matter. But anything that has a boon to magic, a benefit to magic is beneficial. I personally like Argonian. Another reason I like Argonian is the sustained. You look at this, whenever you drink a potion, it restores 12% of your max health, magic, stamina. So if we have 37k max magic on this bar, almost 38k, 12% of that every 45 seconds generally will outweigh the High Elf's recovery benefit when I tested it. So that's why I think the Argonian is better. You can heal a little bit more when I tested it, and also you can recover a little bit more, though it's deceptive because it doesn't show up on your tooltip. And lastly, leveling as a healer. There's really not a whole lot of purpose of leveling as a healer because you're fighting by yourself, typically doing quests. If you're doing dungeons while you're leveling, I mean, really, Breath of Life can get you through almost everything. So I'd recommend just doing a Destro Resto leveling build and just following something like my Omega build and really just using puncturing sweeps all the way through to endgame. I mean, puncturing sweeps, it's just so powerful because it heals you for the damage done. So you can just literally load your bars up with skills that you want to level and just puncturing sweeps everything, and leveling is very, very easy on this build. Just focus on damage producing sets. Like if you're leveling, you can run 5-piece seducers here instead of spellpower here. That will help you out, and like a 3-piece Magnus or something, so it'll give you max magic and recovery. So that's what I would do leveling. Also, you can get some jewelry, just some starter jewelry at the Mages Guild. You can also get some enchants from the enchanter, and just focus on DPS while you're leveling until you reach an end game, because really you don't need a whole lot of healing, and especially if you're just doing some of the normal dungeons, Breath of Life is a good enough skill to get you through almost anything, and you get it right away. Okay, now I'm going to show you a clip of Fungal Grotto, the final boss, and how I heal it, and just what exactly it is I do when I heal. So you're going to see some abilities flex in and out based on what we're doing. But yeah, let's show you how to heal and kind of explain it and walk it through. Alright, so let's get ready to fight this last boss, and it does have a high damage mechanic phase, and I slot in Siphon Spirit, primarily just so I can get a lot of magic sustain to these folks. So when this guy just basically transit on you can kind of go to the opposite side of the room. So you can see my haunts and my circle are going to be down almost all the time. Why is that relevant? Because look at the power that it has with Siphon Spirits up. I don't have to sit there in Breath of Life the whole time. I can just sit there, do a heavy attack, get Infallible up, get the Elemental Drain up, get my ritual down, and the hots to heal over time is enough to heal through some of that major damage. Also, I don't need combat pair since I'm running with a couple Nightblades. In this particular fight, I will throw a Stam Stick, a Blazing Spear, typically on top of my tank once every 30 seconds or so. I'm trying to do my best to maintain Siphon Spirit and Elemental Drain throughout the damage phases. You can see I do Orbs, I do a fully charged heavy to get that Infal going, reapply, and I throw a Stam Stick. So right here is when the heavy damage phase comes out, and I'm just doing a beam, but look how those heal over times work. That's enough right there to get us through this high damage phase with rapid regeneration and extended ritual. So I can focus a little bit more on damage and buffs. So I reapply Element of Drain, Siphon Spirit, a potion comes off cooldown. I'm going to use that to get my spell power buff. I'm going to try to throw a Blazing Spear on top of the boss for the tank, or if there were melee stand builds as well. And then maintain them buffs. Typically orbs can be thrown out now since there is a little bit lag between 20 and 30 seconds, but we have enough DPS with these orbs that they should be topped off on magic. So as long as I maintain my buffs, I'm going to reapply those heal over time effects, get my ritual down, and then bang, this healing is no problem. So I can sit there and beam. So don't undervalue your extended ritual and the effects of heal over time. Also Siphon Spirit, remember they're going to get healed every time they weave in attacks with this ability. So it becomes really advantageous for us in a dungeon if we want to focus more on doing beams during execute phase. Gang, that's a build update for One Tamriel the Battery. I hope you found this information useful, and just remember there is no one exact healer build. There is nothing that you can run that will be perfect for every single situation, so you're going to have to be flexible with your skills and gear, but that gives us a lot of options and have unique, cool, different builds for healers, so that's exciting. Also, I'm working on a Magic Nightblade tank, as you can see from this video. Really enjoying the Catalyst now that I can get Spell Power Cure on my sword and board. It makes it really interesting for like an optimizing group play / tank build. So I'll be coming out with that and some other things, working on PvP as usual. So thank you so much for watching, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time.